I consider myself a classical feminist, or better yet, an egalitarian. I also consider myself classically liberal. I believe Black Lives Matter. I do not support fascism. However, I am not a modern feminist, and I am not a modern liberal, and I do not support BLM, nor do I support Antifa. There's a common tactic in political debate called semantic overload. It's when words have more than one meaning, and the meaning can change in order to corner the political opposition. I mentioned this phenomenon in my BLM video. Black Lives Matter has several meanings. The one I agree with, Black Lives Matter, and the others that I do not, like the implication some people do not care about Black lives, or that there is systemic oppression in the United States, or the openly Marxist political organization who names itself BLM, who in their charter expressed the desire to dismantle the nuclear family and abolish police entirely. Abolishing police, might I add, would disproportionately increase the magnitude of violence against minority communities. If I say, I disagree with BLM, my opponent can then claim I do not care about Black lives, when that is not my position at all. The same can be said of liberalism. I do not support modern liberalism. I do not support the modern liberal agenda. My opponents might claim, I oppose civil liberties and economic freedom, when that cannot be further from the truth. One more example before I get to the point. Antifa, or anti-fascist action. They are a decentralized group of people who, as the name would suggest, oppose fascism. They often dress in all black, cover their faces, act intimidating in the streets during protests, and commit rampant acts of violence and vandalism. In recent years, their totalitarian mask has begun to slip. They are terrorists. Terrorism is defined as using violence to intimidate others and promote a political cause. They claim Antifa is simply shorthand for anti-fascist. Therefore, if you oppose fascism, you are automatically Antifa. If you oppose Antifa, the far-left street militia, the only reason would be because you're pro-fascism. Feminism is the same way. I do not support modern feminism. If I told that to a woman, she could accuse me of sexism. After all, the definition of feminism is equality of the genders. For this reason, it's of utmost importance to define terms before any productive discussion. What reason do I have to reject modern feminism? 2 reasons. It's bad for men and women, and the movement has abandoned the pursuit of equality in favor of superiority. Let's practice term definitions by defining gender. Men are not women. That should be an uncontroversial statement. The facts are clear. The genetic, physiological, anatomical, and psychological differences between males and females are marked, not only among humans but in all species with sexual reproduction. There is no doubt that males are, on average, physically larger, stronger, and faster than females. You would not think it is necessary to state that male and female bodies are not the same. Males have much higher normal levels of testosterone, which underlies physical strength. That is why there are male sports leagues, and female sports leagues. Top female athletes cannot compete with top male athletes. There's about a 10% difference in times between male and female track athletes, from the 100-yard dash to the marathon, and there are greater differences in the jumping events. The best female basketball stars are not competitive enough to play in the NBA, nor are elite female hockey players able to succeed in the NHL. Generally, women do not play football. No woman has ever played in the NFL. The national U.S. women's soccer team was dominated by a 14U boys soccer club. The slogan, "Women can do anything a man can do," is simply a lie. There are 145 men who have ran under 10 seconds in the 100-meter dash. Not a single woman on Earth has ever achieved even close to this feat. The current record stands at about 10.5 seconds. The women's all-time highest raw total, the sum of a max bench, squat, and deadlift, is 1,610 pounds. The amount of powerlifting men who have and can surpass that number on any given day is well within the thousands. The psychology of males and females also differs systematically across cultures, thus negating the social construction argument. A study with 500,000 respondents demonstrated that men prefer working with things and women prefer working with people. There is a large effect size on the things-people dimension. Men showed stronger realistic and investigative interests, while women showed stronger artistic, social, and conventional interests. It may be for this reason that women talk more than men, although verbal loquaciousness appears to be also based in genetics, specifically the FOXP2 language gene, which is found more in abundance in females. It may also explain why females tend to avoid STEM fields. Female undergrad enrollment is far above 50% in the social sciences, but far below 50% in STEM, especially in egalitarian societies. In other words, the male-female disparity in STEM fields is due to differences in interests, rather than any hypothetical discrimination against females. Differences between males and females appear in infancy. Males strongly preferred toys with wheels over plush toys, whereas females found plush toys more likable. A recent study establishing that boys and girls aged 9 to 17 months, an age when children show few if any signs of recognizing either their own or other children's sex, showed marked differences in their preference for stereotypically male versus stereotypically female toys. Males and females also differ in cognitive skills. Women excel in several measures of verbal ability. Women's reading comprehension and writing ability consistently exceed that of men, on average. They outperform men in tests of fine motor coordination and perceptual speed. They're more adept at retrieving information from long-term memory. Men on average can more easily juggle items in working memory. They have superior visual spatial skills. They're better at visualizing what happens when a complicated 2- or 3-dimensional shape is rotated in space, at correctly determining angles from the horizontal, at tracking moving objects, and at aiming projectiles. The brains of men and women are different in many respects, probably due to the different sex steroid hormones that flow into the brain. Many of the differences described previously are reflections of those differences in the brain. The feminist devotion to the social construction of gender was contradicted by the liberation movement of gays, lesbians, and bisexuals. They argued that gays and others could not be blamed for their sexual orientation, because they were born that way. Homosexuality, the argument went, was not a choice that people made. So homosexuality was not an orientation that could be set aside in aid of some social norm or other. Nor could or should homosexuals be pressured to change. Feminists had to hold their tongues and accept this progressive view of biologically determined, hardwired sexual orientations. So the feminist view became, gender is shaped by social construction, except homosexuality. That's biological. If men could be women, and women could be men, there would be no such thing as men or women. Following this line of logic, if trans women truly were women, there would be no need for trans before the term woman. What does the trans prefix denote? Is there, in fact, some noteworthy difference between trans women and non-trans women? If so, the two groups are fundamentally different. Returning to semantic overload, can anyone who believes in gender theory define the word woman? What is woman? According to them, the word woman has no discernible meaning. A woman is not necessarily a person with XX chromosomes and female reproductive organs. A woman is not defined by anything physiological, nor neurological, nor behavioral. Women in the unreality of gender theory is an arbitrary societal concept. It can mean anything, and anyone can be a woman. What exactly does a man mean when he says, "I identify as a woman"? What is woman? Is a woman anyone who enjoys feminine things, or likes to present themselves as feminine? We cannot define feminine without defining woman. This definition could also classify a lot of women into men, and a lot of men into women. Surely, you cannot go from "not all women should be expected to be feminine" to "the only defining characteristic of woman is femininity." Leftists will celebrate the achievements of women, even as they deny the objective existence of women. It's not just biologically, scientifically impossible and illogical. It's also harmful to women. Trans activists will try to draw the distinction between sex and gender when the two are synonymous. The two in a legal sense are used interchangeably. I will, however, grant the idea, gender expression can be a whole different thing entirely. How you express your femininity, or masculinity, or lack thereof, is up to the individual. But that does not make you a man or a woman, or in between, or neither. Modern gender theory stems from Gnostic Dualism, an ancient pagan religion that claims the soul and the body are in a master-slave relationship. The former can dictate and remake the latter. Gnostic Dualism basically states, "I am not my body. I am only my feelings and thoughts. My body is at best irrelevant, and at worst, a limiting cage at which I am entitled to rebel." Gnosticism amounts to a reduction of the human person to merely our soul, or our thoughts and feelings. It is true we are not just our body, but we are also not merely our thoughts or feelings. Feminism is a gender ideology. It makes specific claims about specific genders, specifically womanhood. Transgenderism and its ancient predecessor, Gnostic Dualism, also make specific claims about specific genders, specifically womanhood. The two ideologies make contradictory claims. In transgenderism, womanhood is defined as inclusive for men. Including men into womanhood is inherently harmful to women. It's obvious why you wouldn't want to admit men into female-exclusive spaces. Today, biological males who identify as female demand and have the legal right to enter female dressing rooms and toilets, to receive all special privileges and benefits of females, such as preferred admission, fellowship for females only, preferences for jobs, and admission to compete against other females in sport. There's a faction of feminists out there called TERFs, or trans-exclusionary radical feminists. They believe trans activists pose a threat to female rights, and for good reason. Take the times a man, Fallon Fox, competed against women in the UFC and fractured their skull. Or in Connecticut, where the state championship for the track sprint events were dominated by not one, but two trans athletes. These two men went on to steal scholarships and collegiate roster space that would have otherwise gone to deserving girls. The rules on trans athletes as they are now rewards cheats and punishes the innocent. Newspapers have reported on complaints by women prisoners that are being forced to share showers and bathrooms with biological male inmates. In Massachusetts and other states, trans women are being accepted into shelters for battered women. Many victims of sexual abuse leave said shelters when forced to share rooms with men. If we cannot acknowledge biological sex or the differences of biological sex between the two sex classes, then there will be no protections for women on the basis of biological sex. To round off the topic of how transgenderism is harmful to women, let me speak about Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage. She makes the argument that recent statistics have shown an increase of 4,400% in transgenderism among teen girls. Gender dysphoria has transformed from a vanishingly rare affliction, 0.01% of the general population, applying almost exclusively to boys, to an epidemic among teenage girls. Today, whole groups of female friends in colleges, high schools, even middle schools across the country are coming out as trans. Why? Women are more socially perceptive and influenced by their social circle. Essentially, transgenderism in the LGBT-STD community as a whole is the new goth. The community offers identity to kids who are searching. Things like religion or the army offer a similar ready-made community, but the LGBT stuff seems a lot more fun at first glance. So as a kid, which are you more likely to be drawn to? A kid who decides to adopt being goth as their identity can wear black clothes and makeup one day, then change all of that the next. Worst case, they might have some piercings or tattoos or experiences that they regret. Meanwhile, a kid who decides that they are trans might completely destroy their reproductive ability and suffer psychological consequences for the rest of their lives. After all, 88% of transgender kids no longer identify as such when they become adults. Abigail's book is not an indictment of trans people. Rather, it's an indictment of the medical practitioners who have abdicated responsibility for actually responding to individual mental health needs, and instead do nothing but provide drugs and surgeries whenever anyone claims trans. I would never wish gender dysphoria on my worst enemy. Almost all have committed self-harm in the last year. They are half as likely to graduate high school and 50 times more likely to have HIV, 30 times more likely to develop an eating disorder, a dozen more times more likely to have schizophrenia, 12 times more likely to develop drug or alcohol abuse, have been to jail, become a prostitute, be homeless, be impoverished, or unemployed. Flip a coin. That's the probability a transgender has attempted suicide. These people are suffering from mental illness, and yet, gender theorists celebrate the condition as empowering. Don't kid yourself into thinking this trend changes once they've been accepted as the gender they identify. The suicide rate only increases post-surgery. Maybe that has to do with how drastic and irreversible a genital mutilation operation is. As far as pronouns go, I've heard the argument of politeness be brought up. One should use preferred pronouns because it means you treat the person with compassion and as a human being. But I do not buy that. What is more compassionate? Enabling delusion or speaking truth? To call a woman a man or a man a woman is not true. You would never call a bulimic oinky, nor would you call a schizophrenic Charizard. Denying reality is not healthy. And by enabling the denial of reality, you are actively harming the person you claim to be helping. I will not stand for the government nor anyone else to demand that I abandon truth. Not in the name of compassion, nor for anything else. Thanks for watching.